Okay, thank you. Thank you. Everyone ready? Oh, Senator Pierce. First and foremost, I want to thank the families that are here today. We know that we're approaching the 2-year anniversary of this terrible tragedy, the Yarnell Fire, and I'm glad to announce, as the State Attorney General, working with folks like the State Forester, working with Plaintiffs' Counsel, we have reached a final settlement in litigation, or regarding the litigation involving the Yarnell Fire. This settlement will resolve multiple claims for the families of the Granite Mountain Interagency Hotshot crew that perished in the 2013 fire. I want you to know, as the Attorney General, when I came here very early, I think probably my first or second week in office, I sat down with Mr. McGroder. I also sat down with our lawyers, the liability management section, and I wanted them to know 2 things. One is, as a state, we don't measure our success in wins and losses. We measure our success in whether justice is done for victims. Secondly, we are not State Farm. We are not Allstate. We are the state of Arizona. And that means that we have an obligation when there are times when we can settle and resolve matters and hopefully prevent future tragedies from happening. We must do that. And that's what the settlement does. I believe it's a win-win for everyone. There's nothing I can say or do to comfort the hurt that the families must be feeling, but at least we've been able to come together and hopefully prevent such a tragedy from happening again. So I want to just thank the families once again. Thank you, Pat. Thank you to the Forester for everything you've done. And ultimately, this settlement, do you want me to answer that? Okay. Ultimately, this settlement doesn't assign, blame. The state, the agencies aren't admitting any sort of guilt or negligence, because frankly, that wasn't the goal ultimately of all of our parties. We have another motto around here, and that's don't fix blame, fix the problem. Some folks look for answers, others look for fights, and what we did in this situation is we wanted to look for answers to prevent these kind of tragedies from occurring in the future, and to make sure the victims and their families receive the justice they deserve. So thank you very much. And now Mike Liberty from the Governor's Office will say a few words.
Thank you, Attorney General Brnovich. I'm Mike Liberty. I'm Governor Ducey's General Counsel, and I just wanted to say a few short things, because really this day is about the families of the fallen firefighters and to respect their memory. On behalf of Governor Ducey, we thank the State Forester and the Industrial Commission for reaching a settlement with the families of our fallen firefighters. We hope that this will bring closure for the families and encourage safer policies for fighting wildfires in the future.
Hey, Billy. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pat McGroder. Together with my partners Shannon Clark and Lincoln Combs, we have the honor of representing 12 of the Granite Mountain hotshot families. We're here today to talk about what has occurred in the litigation involving the state of Arizona and the state forester. 2 years tomorrow, Arizona suffered a national tragedy. Tomorrow, the families will grieve publicly, but they've been grieving every day for the last 2 years. Their loss is immeasurable, their pain, their despair, every day of their life over the loss of their loved ones. The outpouring of national empathy and support for these families in Arizona was unprecedented. However, the darkness and despair caused by this tragedy is ongoing for these families, never more to be forgotten. As the facts of the tragedy began to unfold, rumors, innuendos, speculation seemed to run rampant. Various reports were authored, charges were made, recriminations received. I don't know that we're ever going to know every detail of that fateful day, June 30th, 2013. But to the extent that these plaintiffs, these family members, these loved ones, particularly these three women of courage and commitment and dignity behind me, made an effort to try and bring transparency and, more importantly, change, which would ensure that a tragedy like this never happens again, whether it be in Arizona or anywhere else. We were asked and had the privilege to represent 12 of the families in wrongful death litigation against the state of Arizona. We also had the privilege of representing Mrs. Meisner, Warnicki, and Ashcraft in benefit cases that fortunately we were successful in the city of Prescott. As many of you know, the only remedy for wrongful death action are damages, compensatory damages. But that's not what this case was about, and that's not what this case has ever been about. Our clients wanted transparency and change to ensure that what happened to their loved ones that day would never happen again. Acting selflessly, they wanted to create a legacy for their loved ones, lest they ever be forgotten. And in doing so, ensure that change and remedial measures are enacted as a fitting remembrance and an everlasting imprimatur of these fallen heroes on wildlife science, wildland firefighting, and wildland firefighting operations. They had a vision, and that vision was what was in the best interest of the state of Arizona and what was in the best interest of the families. That vision was simple. How can the state of Arizona and how can these families best be served by continuing litigation, whether it be in the context of the wrongful death action that we filed or the concomitant litigation involving ADOSH and the state forester arising out of citations, fines, and recriminations by ADOSH. The vision was brought to and supported by Governor Ducey. The enormity of the commitment of Mike Liberty, Governor Ducey, is appreciated by the family. This vision was also brought to Attorney General Brnovich, a man who believes in creativity and innovation and not necessarily business as usual. The families thank Governor Ducey. They thank Mark Brnovich and all the attorney generals that worked so hard on this case to bring closure. Chief of Staff Bailey, Brock Heathcote, Terry Harrison, Joy Hernroad, David Selden, all the lawyers that were involved on the state of Arizona side to try and bring a thoughtful, analytical, non-incriminatory result to this litigation. Lest I forget, this resolution was three parties. It was us, state of Arizona, and ADOSH and the state of Arizona. After 3 grueling days of mediation, we finally were able to effectuate a settlement. Besides displaying extraordinary leadership in the form of Governor Ducey and Mark Brnovich and State Senator Steve Pierce and Risk Manager Mr. DeCiccio, Governor Ducey blessed us with something very near and dear, and that is a new state forester, Jeff Whitney. A former hotshot, he came to this problem without an agenda. without any preconceived notions, with the concept of what was best for the state of Arizona and what was best for the families. He talked to our families. He cried with our families. He demonstrated the type of integrity and honesty and character that we demand so much from our state government. Forrester Whitney told us about changes that he had made as a result of the Yarnell experience. He told us about changes that he would consider making in the future. And then he sat with us and the families and looked over some 50 or 60 recommendations that were generated by our families. Not only these courageous women, but all of the families that we represented. And we talked about those. And we talked about those in a non-incriminating way. No fault, no blame, no recrimination. Simply what is in the best interest of the state of Arizona, what is in the best interest of these families, and what is in the best interest of wildland fire science as we move forward. As a result of that collaboration and that cooperation and all the emotional toll that this case has taken on our clients, we were able to achieve a result. The result is twofold. Number one, most importantly, we have worked with the state forester collaboratively and cooperatively to try and make the State Forestry Department of Arizona the best in the country through dialogue, through change, through remedial measures, through innovation and creativity that Jeff Whitney has brought to this office, and our families have supplemented with their own suggestions and their own thoughts. You know, tomorrow, the families' hearts will again turn to the tragedy 2 years ago. And of course, there will be a swirl of activity surrounded that tragedy, the anniversary. At the end of the day tomorrow, these families will have to return to their homes, to their memorabilia, to their pictures, to their memories, to the continuing thoughts of those that they love. To say that these clients are courageous would be an understatement. They're not complicated people. They're simple people that believe in character and honesty. They're hardworking Arizonans. They're families who have suffered the most immeasurable of all tragedies. They're hell on earth. For the families, I hope this settlement can achieve a modicum of peace. I'm not sure that it ever will, but I hope it does. Knowing, most importantly, that through this settlement, the legacy of their loved ones will never be forgotten. And that was an important common denominator among the thread that led to the vision and led to people like Governor Ducey and Mark Brenovich and Steve Pierce and all of the assistant attorney generals that came to the table. They understood how important a peaceful, collaborative resolution was to this case.
Could you give us the details of the actual settlement?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. In addition to change and remedial measures that have already been made, are considering to be made, the state forester has agreed to make changes that we have suggested. He's agreed to review and analyze other suggestions that could not be implemented immediately because of statutory restraints or budgetary restraints, or that required a national mandate so that Arizona, although striving to be the best, is not going to stand out in the cold when it comes to communication and technology and all the advances that Forrester Whitney has looked at, has reviewed, and will implement. The other piece is the compensation piece. The compensation piece is reflective of the motivation of these families. The compensation piece calls for $50,000 per family, which, compared to the enormity of this tragedy, sends the strongest possible message that no way, no how was money or compensation for these families the motivating force in this litigation. And as you'll hear shortly, some of the families are setting up a nonprofit foundation to support wildland firefighters, and all of those proceeds will be donated to that new foundation. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I want the record to be very clear, and I want this message to ring out loud and clear, whether it be in Prescott, Arizona, whether it be in Timbuktu. Lest anyone challenge the motivation of these families, their commitment to the greater good, or the terms of this settlement, let me simply say that they have gone through hell. The integrity, the character, the honesty that these women and all the families have displayed in trying to not only learn from this horrible tragedy while trying to put their lives back in some semblance of order with their children, trying to explain to their children what happened to Dad, why he's not here on birthdays and holidays and anniversaries. But at the same time, acting out of the most pure of motives, and that is to make sure this tragedy never happens again. The lawyers in my office, Shannon Clark is here, Tom Kelly, our co-counsel, Caroline McGroder, who doesn't like to use her last name, a lawyer in our office. We're very proud of having the opportunity to serve these women and these families. And we're very proud of our ability to bring together such a public-private partnership with the help of all of the public servants that I've mentioned to achieve the greater good. That's Billy Warnicki, by the way.
Pat,
Yes.
what about the ADOSH? You know, there are those of us who sat through those hearings, all that. What happens to the whole ADOSH penalty, and recognizing the penalty is designed to get people to act properly in the future? Where does that fit in?
As I understand it, Howard, the ADOSH will be issuing a concomitant press release with this press conference. The ADOSH State Forester matter has been resolved on terms that are acceptable to both sides. We were present but not privy to or party to the negotiations at the mediation, so I will address those answers to the ADOSH folks, who are not here but, as I understand, going to issue a press release today setting forth the terms and conditions of that part of the agreement. So let me turn it over to Roxanne Warnicki. You're going to hear from Roxy as well as Deborah Fingston, the mother of Andrew Ashcraft. Roxy.
Good afternoon. As you all know, we are here to announce that the Granite Mountain families, the Arizona State Forestry, and ADOSH came to a settlement in principle that originated from the deaths of the 19 Granite Mountain hotshots at the Yarnell Hill Fire on June 30th, 2013. My husband, Billy Warnicki, was one of the 19 firefighters that died that day. 2 weeks after my husband died, I was able to visit the deployment site. At the site, a flagpole was put out with the American flag to mark the site. I kept my eye on it as I neared closer to the flagpole, preparing myself emotionally and mentally for the desolation that I would see. As I stood at that flagpole, I was able to see charred cacti, blackened boulders, and blackened dirt. But what took my breath away was the topography. I had seen topography maps of the area and that showed the steep hills, but I was not prepared for it. What my eyes saw were boulders that were the size of cars. And I had remembered a saying that my husband had once told me when we were deer scouting 2 years before. He said to never go into a canyon, that inside the canyon would be thick brush, and that when wind travels through that canyon. I know my husband's military and firefighter training. Descending into that canyon went against everything that he had ever been taught in advanced land navigation that he had spent over 8 years studying and practicing. I was enraged. After that day, I knew that I needed answers. It prompted me and my family to file a suit against the state of Arizona to prevent another tragedy like this from happening, to prevent Yarnell Hill, to prevent the Dude Fire, the South Canyon Fire, the 30 Mile Fire, the Esperanza Fire, and the Kramer Fire from ever reoccurring again. I do not want history to repeat itself as it has done several times before. I do not want my husband and his firefighter brothers to have died in vain. And I dread the day when my daughter asks me why she never had a chance to meet her father because he died before she was born. As this case has reached its resolution in principle, and my PSPRS case been settled earlier this year, I can say that I am one step closer to closure. And with the love and support from my family, my friends, my community, I have been able to heal. And from the kinship that I have experienced with my Granite Mountain family, I have seen and felt that love is a true gift from God. But the greatest outcome of this lawsuit is for the state of Arizona, the leader in wildland firefighting, and for the wildland firefighters who bravely defend the citizens of increasing threat of wildfire. I am proud to announce that the Warnicki, Ashcraft, and Finkston families will be donating all of the settlement award, and we will be creating a nonprofit organization that will be an advocate for wildland firefighter safety. The Wildland Firefighter Guardian Institute, a 501c3 that arose from the Yarnell Hill Fire tragedy, a foundation that will be formed from the love, the concern, and the dedication to wildland firefighters from the wives and parents of the fallen firefighters of Granite Mountain Hotshot Crew. Wildland firefighter safety is of the utmost importance to our organization. We will champion firefighter safety through independent investigations, education, and real-life support for firefighter, family, and fire community. Truth, transparency, accountability, change. The future in wildland firefighting is now. The organization will conduct independent investigations on fatalities, injuries, equipment, and technology. We will be a wildland firefighter watchdog group where anyone can report to us anonymously to seek positive change in wildland firefighting. We will offer scholarships for safety investigations, programs, and courses. We will be an advocate for an accredited School of Wildland Fire at universities with a focus in wildland fire. We will outreach to local communities to teach how wildland fires affect them and the importance on defensible space. We will find new safety techniques and equipment to benefit the safety of wildland firefighters. From the Yarnell Hill Fire, a great majority of wildland firefighters, first responders, and dispatchers suffered PTSD from the deaths of the Granite Mountain hotshots. We have personally felt and we have seen the effects of PTSD which we will facilitate PTSD counseling for any of those involved in any fire tragedy. Lastly, I would like to close with a big thank you to my attorneys, Pat McGroder, Shannon Clark, and Tom Kelly. Thank you for passionately fighting on behalf of our loved ones. Thank you to ADOSH, the State Forestry, Attorney General Brnovich, and Governor Ducey for understanding and accepting that wildland firefighter safety needs to be the first priority, and for agreeing that wildland firefighting needs to be brought into the 21st century. Thank you to everyone who supported us, for supporting the Granite Mountain Hotshot crew, but most importantly, thank you for supporting our nation's wildland firefighters.
I'm old. I need readers. I would like to say thank you to Pat McGroder, Tom Kelly, and Shannon Clark. It is through their sound management, passion, and deep hearts that we are here today. I cannot express my complete gratitude to these men. Since the moment I received the call, I lost Andrew. I have been working with a tear in my heart that will never be healed. When our family hiked to the fatality site, I knew we needed to find truth and make changes to ensure that no other mother will hear the words that her son is not coming home. It has been 2 long years of questions, discovery, frustration, and education. This family has been humbled by the love and support from around the world, the country, and our neighborhood. Please know this is a beginning, not an end. There are several families that have started foundations to continue the motto of the Granite Mountain Hotshots, Esse quam vedere, to be rather than to seem to be. There's the Wade Parker Foundation, the William Howard Warnicki Memorial Foundation, and the Kevin Wojak Explorers for Life Association, with more on the horizon. And as stated, the Ashcrafts, Finkstons, and Warnickis are standing together giving all, may I say that again, all of the money awarded to us through these lawsuits, and giving all of our passion to form the Wildland Firefighting Guardian Institute. Our mission statement is as follows: wildland firefighter safety is the utmost importance to our organization. We will champion firefighter safety through independent investigation, education, and real-life support for firefighter families and firefighters and the fire community. Truth, transparency, accountability, and change. The future in wildland fire safety is now. Truth, transparency, accountability, and change has been our mantra since the day it began. We still have work on the horizon. The lessons learned, the truth about the death of our sons, husbands, and fathers will be coming. The fact that we now are working with the State Forester and ADOSH to provide transparency. We know we have a hot shot as a forester. Accountability is for the Granite Mountain Hotshots, Our Boys Lost, and for Granite Mountain Hotshot alumni. They deserve this. Now change. Change that started in our with discussions with the Granite Mountain Hotshot alumni and family. Changes already started with the forester who worked with our guys. He knew their unquestionable skills. Wildland firefighting will be now more effective. The between urban and wildland is now nationally recognized. Incident commands will change. The tragedy's truth and the state of Arizona will be on the cutting edge of updated wildland fighting. The crew. Granite Mountain Interagency Hotshots were an amazing group of men. They were godly men. This crew, and they strived to be the best crew in wildland fire. They knew fire. They knew family. They knew what it was like to be the underdog, but rise above it. Why did God choose to bring them home? I say it's because they were men after his own heart. And he wanted the world to know how they lived, how they worked, and who they were. As Andrew's wristband states, to be better. I would like to thank Jerry, my husband, for always standing there beside me. My final comment is for my son, Andrew. I promise to find the truth, and I will continue that path. I promise to live life until I see you again, even though there are days I wake up and I have to fight to breathe. I called you my treasure from the day you were born. Now you are hidden from my sight, but never from my heart. Thank you.
What was your name again, ma'am? I'm sorry.
Deborah Finkston. Thank you.
Mark, we're done. Jeff's going to say a few.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you very much. You know, the reality that 2 years ago tomorrow we lost 19 of 20 fine young men on a hotshot crew that we called our own here in Arizona isn't lost on any of us. We all understand and respect the reality that there's nothing that can be done to replace or restore them to their families. Through this process, I am confident that we will create a fitting memory to those young men. Through the process, I've renewed old friendships, made new ones, and I think had an opportunity to be a part of bringing a greater appreciation and awareness of safety to the fire ground for these young men who were incredible examples of the skill and the dedication and the honor that wildland firefighters provide. I think I would be remiss if I didn't thank Senator Pierce publicly and Representative Fan for the work that you all did and are continuing to do. Thank you so much for your support, the support from the governor's office, from the AG. This is a difficult work, but well meant. Thank you all so much, and Pat, thank you.
Hey, Jeff.
Thank you.
Jeff, could you talk about some of the specifics that the state forestry will adopt, some of the changes the family was hoping for when you guys...
Thank you. You know, in brief, we, as Councilor McGroder pointed out, there were probably 60 different requests, expectations voiced by the family. We were able to clear the air on some of the things that that we do as a standard in the wildland fire environment. We've agreed to increase our awareness and training and to take some remedial efforts to find ways to more fully communicate on a regular ongoing basis, particularly under extremely rapid changing, accelerating fire behavior, to assure that this sort of tragedy does not occur again, not only in Arizona, but across the wildland community worldwide. We've also continued to look at emerging technologies, and we're going to be adopting some new opportunities that are out there in the industry in terms of increased resource tracking, monitoring, and we've gone back through all of our standard policies and practices. And I think, as Councilor McGroder mentioned, I do have an ability in some respect to carry our desires, our shared desires, forward nationally into the interagency wildland community. And so those are some of the things that I'll be involved with. Thank you.
What kind of things will it take legislative action for? I mean, that was mentioned earlier. You've got a limited budget. We all know what that's about. So what do you need to take back to the folks up the block here?
At this point, I don't see that there's any major changes. it's certainly up to the governor's office and the legislature to, work through some of those opportunities. We work in an interagency environment, and we work well with our cooperators. I look forward to having all of the support that I've had from the governor's office and that my organization's had from the great state of Arizona for 49 years, 50 years coming next year. One final thing I have to say in closing is that, I could not come to this challenge, and I could not have done it without legal counsel that we had, both, in the AG's office and in DOA Risk, with Joy and Brock and David. Thank you so much, and Pat and your team. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You talked about the
I think you've got
interagency
one.
element.
Mr. Whitney?
Mr. Whitney, could
Yes,
you
sir.
explain, and this is what's leaving me confused, is the changes that you guys are offering and that you're promising to make, how can they have an impact when you're part of an interagency system that, for example, doesn't believe in transparency? The Forest Service won't even let its firefighters discuss things, and they conduct investigations that their very statement about the investigation is, we don't want to find out what went wrong.
I think you may mischaracterize the posture and the findings of the serious accident investigation. The wildland fire community is a large one. I have an opportunity in my position to carry the banner and interest that all in the wildland community desire in terms of firefighter and public safety. But I think I can bring, as we develop a lessons learned document out of this and prepare and provide a staff ride, that we're going to be able to provide a learning opportunity to take it to that extent. Thank you.
Family members, to the family members,
I think
this
we're
is
done.
occurring without the sworn testimony
Last
of
one,
Brendan McDonough. And are you content with that?
I'll answer that question. At some time, Mr. McDonough may or may not choose to publicly describe what he saw, what he heard that day. Mr. McDonough has an attorney at this point in time. But in terms of today, whether it be Mr. McDonough or the Blue Ridge firefighters, the purpose of today was to let you know of the enormity of the commitment that State Forester Whitney has made to sit down with our families at great lengths, at great expense, and answer their questions, describe what happened, whether it be informally or formally, or in the case of a ride. So we're very comfortable in terms of the commitment to the State Forester. This litigation was in state court. It was not, well, originally in state court, it wound up in federal court. The the National Forest Service was not a defendant in the case. Had the case gone forward, could we have commanded depositions, testimony? Absolutely. But echoing Dennis's thought, the idea that the federal government is withholding information, the idea that anyone would withhold information from these families it really speaks to the lack of understanding, empathy, and dignity that they should have for these families. So we would publicly call for the Blue Ridge Mountain folks and the National Forest Service to let their people talk. However, at this point in time, we're dealing with families that have suffered the utmost of tragedies. And we are very comfortable in terms of the commitments that the State Forester has made to render information to us within his purview. Mr. McDonough is irrelevant to this press conference today.
Well, wait, I want to make sure you're saying that they promised, based on this, now they will open up, which seems a little different than they've opened up and now you feel confident. Your last statement suggests that now that we've got a deal, now they'll give you the rest of the details. That seems a little backwards.
Well, let me straighten your ass out, Howard.
Okay, tell me
All right. First of all, there are published public reports on both sides of the ledger, State Forester, ADOSH. Those reports were generated by interviews, by expert testimony, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, depending on which lawyer you talk to, those reports were diametrically opposed. The problem we have here in terms of whether or not, Howard, we will ever know exactly what happened, those that can tell us, those can speak to it, are in heaven. And we don't have an opportunity to talk to them. At the time and place Mr. McDonough decides to talk, obviously we will take that into consideration. But the overriding scientific issues, whether it be weather, whether it be communications or lack thereof, whether it be issues regarding incident command and things of that nature, all of that, in addition to the 2 reports that have been issued, have been subject nationwide to theorists, to conspirators, to who killed Martin Luther King. And right now for the families, in this litigation, their concern and their singular concern was working with Jeff and working with Mark and working with Governor Ducey to get in an optimal position so they can have a modicum of peace and understanding. And Jeff has committed to do that, and we are comfortable with Jeff's commitment to do that. Now, whether or not the federal government decides to hide again, as they did in another one of my cases, Fast and Furious, we'll see. But at the end of the day, I am comfortable that to the extent there are facts out there that we may or may not know, or a spin on those facts that we may or may not know, that information will be forthcoming. Thank you all for coming.
We have some additional information in the back. If you don't have the details with ADOSH back there, the gentleman, Tim, raise your hand. Back there. Some of us will be sticking around. Thank you all for coming.
Mark, thanks, man.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seriously.
You got me.